Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick from 5 Reasons Sports at the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm here at Baptist Iceplex in Fort Lauderdale with Alex Baumgartner, who covers the Panthers for us. This is Panthers Media Day. Paul Maurice was prompt at 8 o'clock, setting the tone for the season. We've already heard from Matthew Tkachuk and Sergei Bobrovsky. We hear from other players over the course of the day. Alex, what I took from Maurice at the very beginning was he's going to talk a lot about process, right? You come off winning a Stanley Cup championship, and as even Tkachuk said, you can't win the Stanley Cup tomorrow. We know that the playoffs are unpredictable. They just have to put themselves in the best possible position. But what did you get from Maurice today and kind of coming off of a short summer? As Bobrovsky said, I like that, having a short summer. But again, we feel like we were just here, and now they're back. So how do they get motivated for the next part of this?
You know, it's one of the shortest off seasons in NHL history. Parade was June 30th. Free agency opened July 1st. They won the Cup just a week before. We're already back here mid-September. So 2 straight short off seasons for the Panthers, going back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. Paul Maurice has an extremely tough and challenging training camp that we've seen the last 2 years here in Florida. So there's no doubt these guys prepared their bodies and their minds for the bag skating and the board battles that Maurice is going to put them through the next week. But yeah, they're going to come back in shape, and there's obviously a target on their back. They're the defending Stanley Cup champions. They've been the best team in the East the last 2 years. Looking at the paper, they're the best team in the Atlantic, and I still think the best team in the East. Everything's in their hands to make it back to the Stanley Cup final, so they're going to have a lot of teams gunning out for them this season, and it all starts tomorrow.
Yeah, and look, there are some players that are gone this year, but as Tkachuk and Bobrovsky said, there are players also that are going to bring some energy to the room. You need to change things up even after winning a championship. We've seen teams that win championships, they don't change things up. It gets a little bit stale. I mean, the last team to repeat in South Florida, the Heat in 2013, the Dolphins in 1974. That's how long we're going back, and only 8 teams in the NHL. Do you think, and I know you have an article on the site right now, you can find it at 5reasonsports.com. Do you think from a talent perspective that the Panthers have covered up for the players who've departed?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest loss is Brandon Montour, who was a top 3 defenseman on the team. He's a cap casualty in a hard cap world. They were not going to keep him, but they did a very good job at retaining who I had 1 and 2 on my must bring back. Gustav Forsling 1, and then Sam Reinhart number 2 with 57 goals last year, won Game 7 with his game-winning goal. So I think they did a good job of retaining what they could. They lost a lot of fourth-line depth players, but as we've seen with Bill Zito, they're very good at replacing those kind of guys. The one casualty is losing Brandon Montour, who was very offensive-minded as a defenseman. I think Nate Schmidt coming in for Oliver Ekman-Larsson is a very similar kind of jump-in ad where you're getting a guy coming off of a year where he takes a lower contract than he has in years past. He wanted to come here and play with Paul Maurice again. He had him in Winnipeg for a couple of years. So the challenge is seeing what they can do without Montour. Now, I think Uvis Belinskis is a very good player, was here the whole Cup run. I think they're going to be just fine on the talent standpoint. They lose Vladimir Tarasenko on that top 9, the only top 9 player they lost, Ethan. But that opens the way for Mackie Samoskevich, the highly touted first-round pick the Panthers have had in their system a couple years, who actually trained here this offseason with Tarasenko, because Tarasenko still lives over here in South Florida. So I think from a talent aspect, they haven't lost anyone. They have one of the most talented top 9s in the National Hockey League. They have a very good defensive core. Aaron Ekblad plays good hockey. Gustav Forsling has turned into one of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. And I mean, we've just seen Sergei Bobrovsky have another Vezina caliber season. Spencer Knight comes back in. I mean, this team has all the tools in place to get back to the Stanley Cup final, and they have all the tools in place to win it again.
Final thing here, you mentioned maybe being the best team in the East. Obviously, we know the battles with Boston in recent years, the battles with Toronto. Also, the Rangers, a lot of high hopes about them and possibly what will happen with them. Is there a dark horse team in the Eastern Conference that you see that could give them trouble this year?
I think Carolina's been the team that's been teetering on we need to take the next jump, and they just haven't been able to do that in the playoffs. The Panthers had a pretty good series against the Rangers last year. If it wasn't for Igor Shesterkin, they might have got swept or at least lost in 5. That series went 6. From a talent aspect, I still think look out for Tampa. They retool a little bit, getting Jake Gensel. Carolina's a team that I think needs to take the next jump. But as I look at the Eastern Conference, I don't really think from a talent aspect there's a team that's jumping out to me better than the Panthers. It's going to be teams trying to replicate what the Panthers do. The West is a little different. I think a couple teams in the West are in a dogfight. I think it's going to be Edmonton, Florida again this year, honestly.
It's a lot of long flights for you. We'll have plenty of coverage for you on 5reasonsports.com. Also here on the YouTube channel as well. Look for new shows related to the Panthers during the season and plenty of content, but this team has a chance to repeat, and we haven't been able to say that about anybody since the Heat back in 12 and 13. Good one, everybody.